Today on the DML News Podcast, Trump's tariffs throw a ripple into the markets. They just plummeted yesterday. They're struggling back and forth today. And now Canada is threatening to turn off the electricity to northern states in the United States. We've got this and more, so get ready because it's all unfiltered.
Dennis Michael Lynch gives you his word, and he will never let you down. He will always fight for America.
The only one who really puts his money where his mouth is Dennis Michael Lynch.
Hello, I'm Dennis Michael Lynch, and I thank you for joining me today. Across from me is Denny, my son, my oldest son at that, and on the controls is my son Ryan. We come to you again here today to talk about the Trump administration, Donald J. Trump, America, what's going on, and of course, the leftists, the media, and the nuts who are trying to stop from making America great again. This show is inspired every day by the 47 Report, 47report.com, 47report.com. You go in there, you give your email address, and then the next day you start to become the most smartest person in the world. You will know everything there is to know about the Trump administration, news that's not being covered by anybody else. We don't know why that is, but it's an opportunity for us to educate you. We are the most widely opened Trump-based email newsletter in the world that we know of. And so everybody continues to come back. We have a 98.2% five-star rating from the readers who rate our newsletter every day. It doesn't happen once in a while. It happens every day. And if you go to 47report.com, you're guaranteed that you're going to get that email in your inbox before 7 a.m. Eastern, many times 5 a.m., 6 a.m. And then as a little extra bonus, sort of the sugar on top, is the DML Report. DML Report comes to you every single day before 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you're getting two newsletters completely for free. My newsletter in the afternoon is more of an op-ed going real deep in on a conversation that is happening in the world and across America. Today I'm going to be talking a lot, or I should be writing a lot about the power grid and how it is that Canada is playing with fire. We're going to talk about that a little bit here today. So you get that for free as well. It's all for free. Don't charge a damn dollar, not even a cent. You go to 47report.com, put in your email address, and starting tomorrow, you will be enlightened with both newsletters. Yesterday, we spoke at length. In fact, I listen back to the show every day just to see for technical reasons and just pace and things of that nature. Plus, I just love listening to my son's voice. And I said, you know what, we spent a long time on this whole tariff thing. And I think we did it rightfully so, because right now, so many people are in a panic. Today, Trump is hosting some of the biggest CEOs in the country at the White House, and you know that the conversation is going to be about tariffs. The amount of liquidity and the amount of value that was lost yesterday in the stock market and since Trump has been in office is significant. It is very significant. I, for one, had a long conversation yesterday with the man who manages the money I've saved. And I said, I don't think I'm going to be in the market anymore. And he said, why? He said, my goodness, you couldn't wait for Biden to get out. I said, well, I couldn't wait for Biden to get out because I wanted America to be great again. And I wanted the border issue to be resolved. And I wanted a lot of things in America to improve. I said, but I will tell you right now, I'm not going to deny that during Joe Biden's time in office, the stock market was great. It went up. And the reason why the stock market went up and was great was because although Joe was the worst president in our lifetime, he was consistently bad. All right. Trump has got everybody in what would be called chaotic mindsets. Where are we going today? Where are we going tomorrow? In fact, where are we going in the next hour? Because it just seems like this is so unprecedented. And I understand more than anybody that in order to make a great omelet, you got to break some eggs. But when the cost of eggs are four times what they were, people are like, should we be breaking these eggs? And that's where this is all going. One of the moves today, which is what I want to talk about here for a couple of minutes before I bring Dennis in, Canada. Canada doesn't know what to do. Because the United States under Donald J. Trump is telling Canada, listen, you're going to stop with the fentanyl, you're going to stop with the illegal immigration, and you're going to stop just being woke. We don't want it. You're our neighbor. and you better start acting differently, and you're going to treat us differently. And we're tired of this imbalance of where we're paying for everything and you're paying for nothing. Canada, with its wokeness, is trying to talk tough back to Trump. But it's sort of like a 5-year-old coming up to me right now and saying to me that they're going to beat me up. It's sort of like you just laugh at it. Okay, sounds good. They are now taking this game to a whole new level. It's one thing if you're going to put tariffs on a car or maple syrup or avocado or whatever it is that the item is that we're going to put tariffs on. It's another thing when you start playing with energy. And the Canadians now are threatening that they are going to turn off the power. That's right. Turn off the power to the northern states of the United States who depend on that power in part. And I say in part because I'll get to that in a minute. New York, North Dakota, Michigan, these places, believe it or not, and we're going to get into that, depend on power from the Canadians. Now, this is a massive wake-up call. If there was ever a massive wake-up call, this is it. Sort of like the massive wake-up call that we got and semi-ignored when we were in COVID lockdown. And everybody was talking about, well, we're not going to be able to get any of our medications because China may just withhold them. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. We're relying on China for our medications? Most people don't even know this. You walk into Walgreens, you walk into CVS, and many of those things that you're picking up off the shelf, many of the things that you're getting from a prescription, somehow, some way will tie back to China. And it puts us in the most vulnerable position of all time. And yet we continue to do it. We know it's out there. We know it's a problem, and we continue to do it. So, what's this whole thing with the electricity? First of all, let me just put some of you at rest, especially those of you who are in the northern states of the United States. It accounts for less than 1% of our overall use in terms of electricity. But what Canada does is they've got a lot of water. So they figured, hey, the United States consumes a lot of electricity. So what we're going to do is we're going to create more dams and we're going to create more power and we're going to sell it to the U.S. The U.S. buys that power for multiple different reasons. Number one is because we've gotten lazy. We are just letting our aged power grid suffer the consequences of us not doing anything about it. We will send gazillions and gazillions of dollars overseas for things like DEI programs and, to have, to figure out why snakes don't have legs, all these different programs that are so important. But we won't take that money, that taxpayer money, and put it into a new grid. And our grid is old and it's antiquated and it's vulnerable, very vulnerable to attacks. And I can tell you that there are many different things that put your life and my life at danger. And one of the top ones, if something went down with our electric grid and we lost our power for a long time, severe amounts of people would die. So now the Canadians are playing games. Well, Mr. Trump, if you're going to tariff us, if you're going to keep these tariffs up, we're going to tariff the electricity. In fact, we just may even turn it off. And because the United States has said, well, yeah, we're going to take the Canadian power because A, it will lower prices. B, it will help when there are times like, I'll use New York. New York sometimes has brutally hot summers. Everybody's turning on their air conditioners. It's a largely populated state, and the grid just can't handle it. So, yeah, we're going to need some help from Canada. Instead of rebuilding our grid so we don't have to rely on anybody other than ourselves, we rely on Canada. Now, here's the thing. The Canadians have threatened this, and Trump has actually just laughed. Ha, 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 ha. You got to be kidding me. First of all, we don't need your power, bud. If we have to turn on more power, and if the people of New York and Michigan and the other states that I mentioned have to pay a little bit more money, we're going to pay a little bit more money, but you are not going to threaten us with power. In fact, think about what you're saying. If you cut off the power to us, we're cutting off the revenue to you, and you need our revenue in order to be able to survive. The other risk that Canadians are taking, and I mean a huge risk, is that when you put people's lives at stake, there's a big difference between putting a 25% tariff on a car or, like I said, maple syrup or wood or lumber. When you put people's lives at risk because you're going to cut off much needed energy, you now have created yourself a problem that's not going to go away with a little sign of a pen. The trust between nations. I mean, we've been sharing energy for 100 years. The trust is going to be gone. And once the United States loses its trust in Canada, Canada is done. It's history. Unlike Mexico, who has friends to the south and to the north, in terms of the United States, and then, of course, Central America and South America, Canada has nobody to its north. It only has Santa Claus. And we know Santa Claus only works on one day. And he doesn't need electricity because he's got magical reindeer. So the Canadians should wake the F up. This is not a hard thing to do. Take your Canadian forces, put them along the border, and stop fentanyl and illegal aliens coming into the United States. Trump has drawn a line, and it is now your choice whether to work with Trump or work against Trump. If you work against Trump, you will lose. And let me tell you why I know you will lose. See, Trump doesn't want the stock market to go down. If you remember in Trump 1.0, he used to talk every single day about how it was that the stock market was making a new high, was making a new record. He doesn't talk like that anymore. Markets are down 6% since he took the office 51 days ago. And like I said, it's been somewhat chaotic. Let's remember, Trump has a lot at stake, in the stock market. Truth Social is a public company. When it goes down, he loses a ton of money. So it's not like Trump doesn't care. He does care. And he's probably going to be a little less chaotic with the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows. He'll just leave these tariffs on and he's going to stay the game, which is good. That's what we need. But Canada must recognize something. That if you get on the wrong side of Trump, if you get on the side of where you're actually putting Americans at risk, then you're no different than an Islamic terrorist. And that's the way you're going to get treated. So, Mr. Canada, Mrs. Canada, you may not be happy right now about the tariffs. There's a simple way to solve the problem. You're not doing enough to solve that problem. Solve the problem, and your issues with tariffs go away. But I tell you now, as sure as I've got air going through my lungs, you turn off the power to the United States that we've given you the opportunity to supply us with, and your days are going to be big time numbered. And you could take that as a threat. You could take that as a promise. You could take that as hyperbole. I don't care. I know what Donald J. Trump is going to do if you cut off the electric to this country. He is going to cut off a lot more than the money that goes into your pocket. We'll leave it at that. Dennis, what else do you have today from the 47 report, which is worth telling the good people on the outside of these microphones?
Well, as for what's happening today, I know the House is voting on the continuing resolution to keep us funded till September. I think there's 2 Republican holdouts so far, Thomas Massie and Rand Paul. They're dead against it. And then I know there's a few others on the fence, so it's kind of curious to see where it lands today, if it passes and funds us through, or if I think it's going to pass. It sounds like most Republicans are for it.
Thomas Massie, Trump actually called out for Massie to be primaried because he's giving resistance. Thomas Massie, and it's funny because I put a story up. There was a story on Dennis Michael Lynch this morning about DennisMichaelLynch.com this morning about Thomas Massie and Trump calling him out to be primaried. And somebody responded, "Oh no, he's one of the good guys, Thomas Massie." I don't think he's one of the good guys at all. I've told this story probably 1,000 times. He's 1,001. One of the greatest ways to solve illegal immigration in this country is to cut off the jobs magnet. And the greatest way to drop that from being a possibility for illegal aliens is to put in mandatory E-Verify. Right now, E-Verify is voluntary for all companies across the United States, with the exception of, believe it or not, government contractors. So if you're a business, let's just use me. If I'm a business and I want to hire some people to do warehouse work here, let's just say ship out DML CBD orders, and I want to get the cheapest possible labor, well, then I hire an illegal alien. But if we put it as a mandatory E-Verify program, what has to happen is I log in to mandatory E-Verify on the government website, and I ask that person in front of me, let's just call him Joe from Mexico, and I ask Joe from Mexico whether or not he's got a Social Security number. And he gives me that Social Security number. And once he gives me that Social Security number, I have to run it through the database. And when I run it through the database, I learn that that is either a stolen Social Security number or that Joe from Mexico isn't eligible to work in the United States. So if I hire him at my own peril. I hire him knowing that I could have somebody knock on my door. I'm just not going to hire him. Today, that process is voluntary, but if we made it mandatory, believe me when I tell you, people would be afraid to hire an illegal alien. It is the most common sense approach, and every single Republican who cares about illegal immigration stopping always supports it, except for Thomas Massie. When I found that out, I said, what the hell's going on with Thomas Massie? Why would he, somebody who tries to tout himself as this big, huge, America first, freedom-loving dude, why would he say no to this? And then it hit me. I should probably go and see who is funding him. And would you know it, one of his top donors, and his top donor, I think, in the last election for him, was a meatpacking company out of his state. Who hires illegal aliens more than anybody else? Food packaging companies. So there you go. Thomas Massie is very easily bought and paid for. I do not find him to be any value whatsoever. And so if he's not going to coalesce and come together with the rest of the Republicans, Donald J. Trump is very correct. He should say, Elon Musk, I want you to fund whoever it is that's going to primary against Mr. Massie. We just don't need it. Now, at the same time you've got Rand Paul calling for the same sort of thing. The United States has got to stop spending. We have got to stop spending money that we do not have. And that's why it is that you've got somebody like Rand Paul who is very, very, very big on cutting back wasteful spending. We need to cut back on the amount we're spending. And that's why it is that you're getting the pushback. At the same time anybody who knows anything about money is going to tell you that you need to spend it to make it. So right now, Trump's plans are going to cost a couple of bucks. And we as Americans have to make the decision. Do we want to spend the money on things that matter, like border walls and more to people who are going to be for national defense and things of that nature? Do we spend it now so we save it later? And I've been going along the idea, with the exception of now the up and down story of tariffs. I'm okay with tariffs. I'm okay with spending if it means that we're going to spend now and we're going to tariff now. So this way we are more strong later on. And that's my 2 cents on that one, Dennis.
Well, just kind of going back to immigration, I mean, this was one of our main reports from 47 report. I think one of the things that needs to kind of be stepped up in the next few months are definitely these deportation numbers. I know they just tried deporting a pro-Hamas activist, and a federal judge blocked the deportation. I mean, we talk all the time about how these judges keep throwing these blockades up. So one of the things that Kristi Noem at their department is doing, the CBP One app is now being turned into CBP One Home, or CBP Home app, which is going to be almost like an exit survey for illegal aliens to self-deport out of the country.
See, now it's amazing you say that. And this is one thing, again, I find it's amazing. We're Tuesday, and I've already had 2 days here where I have no choice because I can't lie to myself. I have two choices, two days in a row where I'm criticizing the administration for the very first time. I mean, yesterday it was criticizing about how it is that Trump has to be more consistent with the tariffs. Either we have them or we don't have them. Don't play seesaw games because companies don't know what to do. In fact, last night I had a dinner with two guys. One was a small business owner, and the other one was a CFO of a company, very interesting company. They do things with used oil from fryolators. I didn't even know that there was such a thing. And they both said to me, and they're both big time staunch Trump supporters. They said he's got to stick with something. And the CFO was saying, he goes, he just retired, this guy. He says, if I were operating today, I wouldn't know how to operate. Because are these tariffs going to stick? Are they not going to stick? He goes, and so it's uncertainty. He goes, and so we're going to wait it out and we're not going to spend. That was yesterday's criticism. Today's criticism is, okay, you're going to have an app? Oh, that's nice, for self-deportation, because I'm the biggest champion for self-deportation. Number one, it is the most humane way of doing it, for the liberals, right? You're not putting somebody in handcuffs, and you're not putting them into a paddy wagon, and you're not putting them on a flight. It's not big cry, oh my God, you're separating me from my family. None of that stuff. It's, hey, there's the door. We're not going to do anything to you on your way out. We're not going to punish you for being here illegally, but we'll say goodbye to you. See you later. If you really wanted people to self-deport in huge numbers, cut off the jobs. Put in mandatory e-verify and let people know you're not going to get a job. If that were in there today, the mass exodus down at the freaking Mexican border would be worthy of TV cameras. And they're not doing it. And I can't understand why. So it's hard for me to go 100% total serious. Ooh, they're really looking to get self-deportation numbers. They are basically doing a workaround, the number one thing that would be able to work. I don't know why. I mean, I don't have an inside track on this. I do not understand why they're not putting that into place vis-a-vis an executive order, or for whatever reason, that's what they're doing.
I mean, and I feel like they would have the capability and technology to do it, especially with AI now. I feel like if anything, it would streamline e-verify almost 100% efficiently.
Well, the e-verify program is one of the most efficient and working technologies that the government actually has in place. I mean, and I've actually tested it. It is the most simple thing you've ever witnessed. You literally have somebody's social security card. You go, it doesn't take more than, I think we timed it, 13 seconds to do. And you literally go in and you type in the number, and it comes back and it tells you instantaneously, this person is eligible to work, this person is not eligible to work, this person's dead. It gives you everything you need to know in a heartbeat. So I think, personally, if I had to guess why it is I think that there are so many different companies, countless companies in the United States of America, who are hiring illegal aliens, and Trump is concerned that he is literally going to piss them off.
I mean, we talked about it 2 weeks ago. There was that one governor from Oklahoma, begging to, consider keeping illegal aliens in. And I just think you said something I think last week, or maybe the week before, that if the country is so propped up on illegal immigration in terms of making the economy or even the workforce work, it's a little baffling to think about. But again, they tout the 11 million number, and we know it is drastically more than that. So it just makes you wonder, is it really that if we can't actually get a true mass deportation, that the cards would all just crumble? Is that really the crazy argument at this point?
If it is, if our economy is indeed reliant on illegal aliens, that is the equivalent of somebody saying, I'm in business in the drug trade. That's not a legitimate business. You're one day away from the house of cards falling in. So if our country is completely reliant on illegal labor that's not supposed to be here, that's undercutting American citizens, we are in a huge, huge problem. Look, it's like anything else. If you have an issue with you physically, it's very likely that if you don't fix that issue, it's going to trickle into something else in your life, right? I mean, diabetes, right? Somebody who's extremely overweight usually gets diabetes. Then all of a sudden, if you have diabetes, that's going to start to impact your heart, right? So it's one thing leads to the next. We have a video clip here of JD Vance, and he's speaking about how it is so impossible these days for families to own a home. Think about that for 1 second. Do me a favor, Dennis. Reach up and get me that sign that we have up there. So for those of you who watch this program versus those of you who just only listen, you see that Dennis and I are always surrounded by these headlines. And what I did is when we opened up the studio, I looked for things that I thought had some of the biggest impacts in the United States over the course of time. Movies, political stuff, elections, businesses, you name it. And one of the things that I printed out was this one advertisement for where I actually grew up. And it says value, beauty, and charm. 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, $11,990 or $87 a month. And this was the original Levitt house in Levittown, Long Island. That was it. Think about this for a moment. A house that has 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, and just absolutely beautiful, a nice starter home for $12,000 or $100 a month. Those days are long gone. We no longer have the white picket fence. We no longer have the American dream to where people can do this. And one of the things that J.D. Vance is bringing up is the fact that this is one of the things that has been crushing America for the longest time. Ryan, play the video.
I have to say, I'm hard-pressed to think of a time in my 40 years of life where it's been so hard for normal American citizens to afford a home. Even renting a home has become a challenge, or worse yet, fallen completely out of reach for so many of our families. I was talking with a relative a couple of years ago, and she just made kind of an offhanded observation as a younger person than I am. She was looking to buy her first home and just mentioned that when her parents were growing up, they could afford a nice home on a single middle-class income. And she was sort of mentioning this as a sorrowful thing. She was sad that that wasn't true for her generation. And I think all of us in this room, certainly including me, have a little bit more work to do, I think, to make housing more affordable. I want to talk about that because I think it's the issue where our interests in some ways are most aligned with the people in this room. You know, I read recently that the average income it takes to buy a new house is nearly 2 times the average salary of your typical American family. Not the average American worker, but the combined incomes of a husband and wife. And that's just not acceptable or sustainable in the United States of America. We want Americans to be able to afford the American dream of homeownership because we know that when people own their homes, it makes them a stakeholder. It makes them a stakeholder in their neighborhoods, in their cities, and ultimately, of course, in this country that all of us love so much.
Now, we're going to prepare to play the second video right away. What are the reasons why that Americans can no longer afford a home? I mean, obviously, prices of everything have gone up, so the Levittown house at $12,000 isn't even an option. In fact, for some people, it would be $12,000 a month in a mortgage payment. But why is it that we are having such a hardship when it comes to renting homes and buying homes? And about 3-4 weeks ago on this show, we had revealed, I thought it was either Bank of America or I know it was JP Morgan Chase. JP Morgan Chase did a whole analysis on why it is that there's such a big, huge housing crisis. They couldn't understand it. And I was like, oh my goodness, I have been saying this for so long. And finally, JP Morgan Chase is catching on. They attributed it to the high number of illegal aliens who are in this country. So I'll let JD Vance start the conversation, and then you and I will fill in the gaps. Play it.
We've also, unfortunately, made it way too easy for people to compete against American citizens for the precious homes that are in our country to begin with. Now, I'll say this, it's actually not just an American problem either. If you go to Canada, where because of their laws and regulations, they've seen a massive increase in the number of people who have come into their country. You go to the United Kingdom, you go across the world, and you see a very consistent relationship between a massive increase in immigration and a massive increase in housing prices.
So, Denny, we've talked about this a gazillion times. Vance didn't really give much detail there other than that it's a global problem, not just a U.S. problem. And the thing is that when you have, and I'll tell you what, we won't go to my number of 50 million, but we won't play the number of the U.S. government at 11 million. We'll split the difference and we'll call it 30 million, right? If you've got 30 million people in the United States of America who are being given a free pass on everything, they could go to school for free. They're going to the hospitals for free. They're getting EBT cards, right? And in the Biden administration, they were getting loans for cars, loans for building businesses. If you get these people who are being given everything that the American citizen is given, with the exception of they don't have to pay taxes, well, they're going to need homes too. And so what winds up happening is that Ryan Lynch goes to try to rent an apartment or rent a home. And he goes in and the guy says, all right, Ryan, well, the rent on this house, this 2-bedroom or whatever, what was this 4-bedroom, 2-bath home. Okay, let's say Ryan was married with 2 kids. This is going to wind up being $5,000 a month. And Ryan's like, $5,000 a month? My God, I only make $6,000 a month. I'm making $72,000. I'm the average citizen. Well, I don't know, I'll tell you, $5,000 a month. So what happens is Ryan's living with me. His family's living with me while he's out trying to find a house. He finally finds one that's $3,500 a month. It's next to the railroad. It's really noisy. It's a piece of crap. The bathroom is crushing down, whatever. But he says, the hell with it. I'll just get it, and I'll fix it up. $3,500. Well, here's the problem. That $5,000 home, the one that was decent, that was down the block from me, he can't get it because there are 4 families who are here illegally, who are used to living like that, all taking one of the bedrooms. And they're all living in one room. And some of the kids are living in the living room and they're putting up...
we've seen it. We've seen it in our hometown. I mean, there's literally a whole section of our hometown where it is almost localized for that kind of living.
Absolutely. So now you've got Ryan's having to try to come up with $5,000, and then yet the illegal aliens who are making the same dollar amount as him but not paying taxes are sitting there and dividing that $5,000 among the 4 of them. It's $1,250. So they're each paying even 50% less than Ryan would have been paying for that piece of crap one next to the railroad station. We have made it impossible for Americans to compete.
Of course. And then when you even do, with visas, and then they facilitate having their whole family come over, whether it is legally or even illegally. So it becomes almost like a spiderweb effect. It's funny. You were like answering someone's question on Facebook asking how these illegal aliens get the loans in the first place. And you just laid it out. So
Biden gave it to them. They were giving grants.
Yeah, they were giving grants. They didn't have to do a lot to apply for it. So it's interesting hearing Vance talk about how much it has changed. Where you go back 5 decades, you could have the father in the household working a job that was steady, that had commitment and loyalty to the employee too. Because I think one thing with my generation, and I think it can kind of go both ways, very honestly, there's not so much a loyalty aspect anymore with the employee to employer relationship. I mean, some of the people I know personally that have just flipped over jobs, like 3 jobs in 1 year. I mean, 5 decades ago, you would have someone working at a firm and it was a 20, 30 year, stick around, and that those days are kind of really over. So you go back 5 decades, you had the father, working a job, the mother could stay home and be the mother to not just 1, not just 2, but 3 to 4 to 5 kids. And now that's switched. Now you have to have the father and the mother probably working 2 high-end jobs to really afford the white picket fence theory. And, it's 1 or 2 kids, because either, you start going beyond that, the affordability becomes too much. And even if you wanted to, you're probably in a house that wouldn't permit it to be that way. And that, trying to find a house in the affordability of what you're making to then make that move. I mean, that's another big thing. I know that we're in a market, particularly with my generation, they're buying houses and they're kind of planting themselves there. And then based on their mortgage and based on their costs, to try and sell it and then move on is even more difficult.
The only way to solve the problem and to answer somebody's question about how do they get that, I mean, one great way you could do it is through a stolen Social Security number. I mean, I remember the first time I went for a mortgage. I was you were not born yet, but we were planning to have you. I went for a mortgage. I think I was 25, 26 years old. And the guy said, you know, you're going to have a hard time getting this mortgage. I said, why? Because my age? He says, well, yeah, but for another reason. I said, what is that? He said, you have a mortgage that you defaulted on. I said, what are you talking about? This is the first mortgage I've ever had in my life. He said, when you were 2 years old, somebody had taken my Social Security number and got a mortgage under my Social Security number. So if you get somebody at a bank who's going to look the other way, or you get a bank person who's just like, all right, I need a Social Security number, and they're going to run the Social Security thing, and then all of a sudden you see, they're not looking for your age. They're looking for your credit score. So if you grab somebody's Social Security number and you put it in there, and they say, oh, okay, great, and you show your the money in the bank or whatever, there are some banks that are going to wind up giving you loans. And so there you go. That's how they're getting it. And on top of that, like I said, the Biden administration was giving out free money to illegal aliens. And that's how it's working. So keep in mind that there are a lot of things that are happening here in the United States that Trump has got to fix. Another thing you talk about, if we're going to stick on immigration here for a little bit before we change topics, Kristi Noem, ICE was putting out raids, and those raids were getting interrupted by people within the agency. And so they found out that these people were internal and that they're actually bureaucrats. Do we have that clip, Ryan? Oh, Kristi? Play Kristi Noem.
Is there anything you can share with me about any commonalities between these leakers? Like, what drives them? Are they ideologues? Do they believe in illegal immigration? Like, why are they doing this?
Bureaucrats, and they don't like integrity in our government system. They want the status quo. They perhaps don't believe in support in President Trump and what he's doing to make America safe again. So that's one of the reasons that what they're doing has so clouded their judgment that they don't recognize that every single day they don't necessarily, I think, grasp the severity of what they're doing. They're putting people's lives in danger because they have a dislike for what President Trump is doing. But they like things to stay the way that they are with no accountability, and we're holding them accountable.
Yeah, so the Trump administration, when it comes to immigration, is up against a lot of forces. And some of it is internal, where people are going to do everything they can to possibly interfere, AOC, to interfere with these acts of deportation. If it's not a judge, if it's not a mayor, if it's not a governor, now it's from within. And I just don't understand it. It is so anti-American to want these people to be in here and to be stealing from Americans, whether it's jobs, housing, or what have you. And, we've got this measles outbreak right now in Texas. Do you think it's by chance that it's in Texas? I mean, why isn't the measles outbreak in Kansas
specifically
or Tennessee?
Specifically West Texas into New Mexico, which I know that area is
illegal
alien central.
The amount of disease that we have taken in from this country, the diseases that we thought we had eradicated or that we had curbed significantly, I will never, ever, there's certain things when I go back and I look at my career of over doing the stuff with immigration and the films and all the people I met, whatever, I still to this day, it's a really good story. It's worth telling for a couple of minutes here before we wrap up. So back when I was on Fox News, I remember I used to get a lot of emails. A lot of people would reach out to me. And one day I get a woman, she reaches out to me and she says, I work within the Pentagon and one of the top generals is my boss. And I am getting day by day, this is during the Obama administration, I am getting day by day, 3 times a day, reports from HHS, Health and Human Services, that are down at the border and doing checks of these children as they come in. She goes, I'm seeing the spreadsheet. The amount of diseases that these kids are bringing into our country is incredible. She goes, and nobody is being told. So I said, okay, send me the information. I look at the freaking spreadsheets and I'm blown away. This is another one of those times where I said Fox News isn't what I thought it was. Fox News, I handed over those spreadsheets and I said, I'd love to come on and talk about this. They would not display the spreadsheets. Every single disease you could possibly imagine was on that sheet. Tuberculosis, measles, chicken pox, H1N1 flu, every single thing you could, scabies, and they would not put it on. And I said, why won't you put it on? And they said, because it's diseases that are connected to children. Like, in other words, they didn't want to make the children look bad. And I threw my hands up in the air. I said, I don't even know what to do anymore. I don't even know what to do anymore. Which, by the way, another really great op-ed that I did a few days ago on the DML report. In fact, it's one of the most open ever. Is the amount of money that is going into the media from foreign countries. I got a lot of comments on this. People don't know. Newsmax took in $50 million from Qatar. I mean, this is not like taking $50 million in from Canada, all right? Or even the UK for that matter, Qatar. And they didn't say anything about it until Bloomberg News learned about it, discovered the documents, and revealed it. And then Newsmax said, oh, yeah, you're right. Fox News, same thing. Saudi Arabia, one of the top princes over there, had a humongous $1 billion stake in Fox News for the longest time. So it's amazing to me how it is that these places, Hannity's another one. I defy you to go back and just search online and see whether or not AI can find any one of the Hannity scripts. He has never, ever, 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 ever mentioned doing mandatory e-verify, ever, because he believes in that kind of cheap labor, and that's it. And he'll always scare everybody talking about national security, national security, national security. I have said this how many times on the show? You don't think terrorism is being, killed by somebody in a DUI or being, some of the things that we've seen, Lake and Riley? You don't think Lake and Riley was the subject to terrorism? I think it's being terrorized. So it's a shame that we don't even have the media on our side. Nobody ever asks the question to Trump, why don't you do mandatory e-verify? Nothing. It's just always about the Democrats. And I understand that there's a play there. But at the end of the day, these things are tools that are in place, and they're just not being used.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a curiosity sense as to Trump did a lot of podcasts and alternative media and those kind of interviews during the campaign trail. I mean, Joe Rogan's episode with him was probably his biggest of all time. But since being elected, I mean, every weekend he's doing a Fox News interview. So I would kind of maybe like it if he went back to what he was doing on the campaign trail, because that was probably more incremental to his election than someone watching him on Bret Baier or, another Hannity program. And I think maybe partially the reason he's going to Fox every weekend is because Fox crafts their questions in a very specific way. So I would like it if maybe someone on the Trump team maybe can change it up a little bit with who Trump is communicating with. Because I get it, the media appearances are important to keep the public updated. But, I think we need to change it up from always doing a Fox News exclusive every Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, look, the other thing too is, you got to remember, I just think as Trump goes a little bit deeper, he's got to remember that as much as he wants to bring people together, he's got to remember that ideology is such a powerful thing. I mean, Sam Altman, right, OpenAI guy, gives money to the inauguration fund, sitting there making the announcement of the SoftBank. He's at the White House. Well, you know what happens. He's going home and he's getting crap from his Silicon Valley people. Now he's turning around and he's giving money to a fundraiser for one of the senators who are always giving Trump a hard time. And
I'll give Elon Musk.
Let's stick along our friends and who we know we could trust.
Elon Musk even sounded the warning on that weeks ago, saying,
Yep.
what was the nickname? Scam Altman.
Yeah.
So it's fun. I know you and I had those worries months ago when all the tech billionaires were lining up with here's $1 million here. The Zuckerberg one was the biggest red flag.
Absolutely.
And I get it. Trump wants to get this economy roaring and past all the troubles we've downtrodden in the last 4 years, and that requires working with people you don't want to work with. And I know Trump has had to do that his entire life, but there are just some snakes in the grass that I feel like aren't worth dealing with. Sam Altman's one of them. I was not colored shocked when I read the report that now he's fundraising for Democrats. So we got to stick with the right people and surround ourselves with the right people. And look, like I said it yesterday, there's times I disagree with Elon Musk, but he just did an interview and he's hurting too. With the way that the markets are going, but dealing with protests and property damages at his facilities by these protesters. But he's trying to stick the course and actually try to get the wasteful spending out. And he's even facing from Republicans in Congress about it. So it's always an up mountain battle rather than just even an uphill battle.
Yeah. I was just looking at this right now. Dow extends losses, falls 400 points as Trump hits Canada with more tariffs. I don't know how much more of this people are going to be able to take. I don't even want to take a look at what I'm down today.
So is this really just now the ultimate plan of suffocate Canada until they're our 51st state?
I don't know. I don't want Canada as our state, but but Trump rises Canadian steel aluminum tariffs to 50% in retaliation for Ontario energy duties. So that's where it's going to go. But this is what I'm talking about with uncertainties.
Right.
Dow is down 500, S&P is down 50, which is significant. NASDAQ is down 110. There's only a certain amount of this sort of thing that can happen until people give up on supporting this thing. So he better be going very, very careful, because this is going to be one of those times where he may just think that he's got more support than he really does. He's going down a very, very, very slippery slope. This is not, when I see things like that, it's one thing if you have a couple of days where you've got some bad numbers, but this is people saying, I'm getting the hell out. I'm getting the hell out. And it's pretty ugly. Last word from you.
Well, I always root for America, and I know Trump loves this country, so I don't have doubts there. But I think he's got some tough waters he's going to have to navigate, and I'm hopeful by the end of the year, maybe this all has the payoff with the tariffs. I don't like that he applies it to Mexico and then rescinds it from Mexico, but now he's doubling on Canada. So, whereas I think when it comes to the two borders, obviously the southern one is more detrimental with the trafficking, but I'm hoping that the plan here really does at least put Canada on their toes to, cut back on this idea of cutting off the electricity to us. It's absurd on their part.
I want to say something I said on the show yesterday. I'll repeat it here because I think it's worthy of saying. Canada is Canada. Okay, great. But we've got a lot bigger problems than just Canada. And if Canada was a significant part of our overall day, I get it. But I don't think it's that big of an issue that we have to be spending all this time and all these resources on working with Canada and what have you. The fact that America right now, its financial stability is sort of like, whoa, what's going on here? When you start putting that kind of stress on markets, what's going to happen is companies are going to pull back, and exactly what Trump was hoping for is not going to happen. And that is that more jobs will be created at home. There's one thing to say, hey, this is a long-term plan, but how long is long-term? When you have companies losing a fourth of their value or half of their value, they're going to sit there and say, wait, you want me to what? You just stripped out half the value of my company. So, you gotta watch. And then there's a certain point of where if he changes his tune because he wants the market to come back up, they won't trust him. So I don't know at this point what he's doing. I'm for a loss of words. I don't even know how to defend it anymore. I mean, I won't criticize it to, sit here and slam him, but I can't understand what he's doing, so, it is what it is. I guess we'll just have to ride it out like a bad fever and see how it works. That's it for us. We wish we had some better news to give you, like, hey, the markets are up and everything's good, groovy, but not today and not yesterday for certain. So anyway, I guess as the New York Post had in, strap in, buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride, and let's hope that the seatbelt actually works. So that's it for us. If you don't mind, if you want to help us out, dmlcbd.com/mug, the Life After 50 mug, dmlcbd.com/mug. It's the mug I drink out of every single day, although I didn't drink out of it today because I don't have coffee, and I have a coffee stand at the bottom of my mug. I haven't washed it. We have to wash these. And then, but anyway, they're real cheap. If you use the LIFE coupon, LIFE, at checkout, you save yourself 10% on the mug and free shipping. DMLCBD.com/mug. And don't forget, go to 47report.com. 47report.com. Sign up today and start getting your newsletter tomorrow. Until the next time, may God bless you, your family, the president, the vice president, the stock market, all of our 401ks, if you have one, and the United States of America.
And today's teamed email blessing goes out to Roberta Shefke.
Sounds good, Roberta. Take care.
Get the Dennis Michael Lynch podcast every day by subscribing on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and download the DML News app from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store for breaking news, merchandise, films, exclusive content, and teamed email.